How are we going for time?
We have 1 minute.
60 seconds, team. Morning, Aileen. Nearly there. We won't start before 9, just in case we've got people joining us online, and we'll be recording as well. Okay, 9 o'clock. Nau mai, haere mai, mihi ana kia koto katoa. Tēnā koto, tēnā koto, tēnā koto katoa. We'll do a karakia first, please, if we don't mind standing. Tutawa mai I runga, tutawa mai I raro, tutawa mai I roto, tutawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai kia e. Ngā mihi nui, thank you. Right, welcome to those folks who have come here for public forum. Some of you have done this before, so you know the procedure. We'll just call for any apologies. Are there any? Doesn't look like it.
We do have Councillor Robson Sinclair online.
All right, good morning, Councillor Sinclair.
Mario.
Okay, straight to public forum. Who have we got up first? Sonia? Sonia, welcome. Sonia, have you presented at public forum before?
Yes.
Okay, so you know the drill. You get 5 minutes and then we'll press a bell or give you a buzz at 4 minutes. So, right. Take a seat, please, and you'll need to push yes so that the folks online can hear. So left-hand button, right-hand button, sorry. The other left. All right. Okay.
Working now? Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you for your invitation today. My name is Sonia Merce, and I spoke at this panel 1.5 years ago to introduce the Coming Home project. Coming Home is setting up a healing and recovery centre in Thames for people in need who suffer trauma and have difficulties coping with life. They may struggle with anxiety, depression, anger, addiction, poverty, or sleeping rough. It is for those who are ready to change and who would like to start a new life. Over the last 1.5 years, we've been working a lot on Coming Home and have written a business plan, financial plan, governance plan, and a feasibility study. The concept is to provide a house with house parents and a program that helps people to heal their hearts, renew their minds, and transform their lives. Coming Home is not an undertaking of the Thames Baptist Church. It is an entirely separate venture. Though the former pastor, Chris Lee, was supportive of it, Coming Home was never under their church. Eddie Churton from the Baptist Church is now trying to establish a separate project for emergency housing, which is quite different to Coming Home and without a healing program. As for us, we have the focus on teaching and inner healing. We have established our own charity and are registered with Charity Services and Companies Office as an incorporated charitable trust board. Mental disorders like depression and anxiety, as well as breakups of relationships, addictions, and rough sleeping, are secondary symptoms that generally have their root cause in childhood trauma, and which will be addressed and dealt with in our program. Coming Home takes a holistic healing approach with love at its base. It's not about symptom or behavior management. It's about going to the roots, to the causes that lead to the circumstances and conduct of the person. The goal is healing of the heart and change from the inside out, leading to transformation. Coming Home is a much-needed project in our town, as we have significant and increasing numbers of people who struggle with life. There's no residential program in our region, the Thames Coastal, as well as the Karakia district. The present service providers in our area offer some hours of support, yet for most people it is not enough to get one session a week, especially if they have hit rock bottom. Our Healing and Recovery Centre will have high expectations of commitment to the program. The minimum stay is 1 year, but the journey back to wellness may take around 2 years. The residents will be connected with counsellors, mentors, prime ministers, and learn about life skills and, for example, communication, conflict, finances, relationships, etc. The residents in our 5-stage program will have an intensive structured timetable and very strict rules. The goal is recovery, restoration, healing, and wholeness. Participants will develop as an individual, learn to do life well, and get back onto their own feet. They will be integrated into society, reconnect with family, get work and housing. It will be a safe environment as no bad behaviour is tolerated, and the centre is strictly nicotine, drug and alcohol free, with testing in place. We will be selecting suitable house parents so the residents are never on their own. The opening may be just a few months away. We've set up policies and are working on procedures, admission papers and other paperwork. At the same time, we are looking for a house, either rented or given. In any case, we will need support from the council for a resource consent. We ask you to help us establish this distinguished centre and to support coming home. This can be done in many ways, with funds, donations, as a volunteer, with a building and granting a resource consent, which is essential to make it an official place. Thank you for your support. Please feel free to ask any questions or contact me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. Councillors, any questions? I have a couple of quick ones. It's a residential program for 1 year. You don't have a building yet, or you're in the process of putting that together now?
We're in the process. We're looking at different ones, but I haven't chosen yet, but we've got something in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what ages are you going to be?
It would be 18, probably up to 60 around. When people get past that mark, it's harder for them to start a new life, but we're open and do it on an individual base.
So 18 to 60?
Roughly, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But definitely 18.
And how many people do you envisage you might be able to cater to?
Yes, so we would start with about a handful of people. Depends on the house as well. The one we're looking at right now that would host, say, about 8 people easily. And so we're trying to start with a small number. And once we establish, we can always increase at a later time. It will spread, the word will spread. People will see, oh, actually they started a new life. And other people will want that as well.
All right, thank you, Sonia. Any further questions, councillors?
Just a question. Have you approached government departments that cover these sort of people to seek assistance from them and approval for being people to operate this way?
There is a lot to that question. It's not as easy to go their way because they have a different approach, and the typical rehabs that they have set up are about a month, 2 months, maximum 3 months programs, and the people come out and go back to the street because they have no other place to go. So it's not a holistic program, and so we are different. We distinguish ourselves.
There are some organisations that are far longer care and the government have approved them. And all I'm saying is if you can't meet the standards, it's going to be very hard to get money, having dealt with the organisations in that field.
Thank you, Councillor Gottlieb.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay in the.
The money side of things, they will support themselves with their benefit in the beginning until they get work. They will still pay certain amount of rent and board, and we also try to set up a voluntary work for the community where we get a little bit of income. So the goal is really to be self-sustaining. Just to answer that.
Councillor Morrissey has a question.
Sonia, first of all, thank you for the work you do. Much appreciated. Is this aimed at specifically Thames residents, or it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you spoken to the local community board about this
I've spoken to the community board last year.
last year? And have you applied for any funding through the community board, through their grants, or?
As to my understanding, there wasn't any around at that time, but I will definitely go back.
I think it's worthwhile staying in touch with your community board regarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No. Once again, thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thanks a lot.
Right, we'll invite Fiona and John, Creative Coromandel, please.
Kia ora tātou, ko Fiona Cameron Aho, Chair Creative Coromandel He Mana Toi Moho Trust. John McIntyre is Deputy Chair and Horek Māori Trust Board Representative Morena Mea Len and councillors and staff. Thank you all for letting us come to Public Forum this morning to korero with you and to present our impact report, which I'm very excited to hold up here. I assume you all got the email of the impact report. We are here to present the council and release to media the recently completed impact report for the Coromandel Artbeat Spring Festival 2024. Creative Coromandel harnesses the power of our creative sectors and builds a stronger, fairer and more prosperous future. Between September and December 2024, we did just that. 91 signed up events, a total of 30,629 attendees, 6,554 tickets sold, and 9,189 visitors from outside Arohi. We are thrilled to say that our second Artbeat Spring Festival was a great success. From artist open studios, workshops, music gigs, local theatre, community events, festivals, exhibitions, and our online program was a creative gig guide that captured the creative spirit that is Hauraki Coromandel. Our festival's objectives were to enable the arts sector to achieve its creative potential and thrive, draw more visitors to the Coromandel from our closest urban centres of Auckland, Waikato and Tauranga, strengthen and reinvigorate our businesses and communities after the negative effects of COVID-19 and our severe weather events, community engagement, positive economic impact, cultural enrichment to support diverse artistic expressions around the Coromandel and Hauraki, to communicate, collaborate and to coordinate. Out of those 91 events, 23 were exhibitions, 20 were youth or children, 6 were festivals, 33 outside groups or performers, 2 film festivals, 27 workshops or wānanga, 24 music groups, 10 dance, 7 ngātoi Māori and 8 theatre. Our creative communities are well and truly thriving and a part of our lives here and contribute significantly to our region's economic and social positive outputs. We are looking forward to bringing more creativity and community to life here in Hauraki Coromandel, and we are looking at launching our Coromandel Artbeat Spring Festival 2025 from September to December this year. Kia ora, I'm just going to hand you over to John to finish off.
Kia ora, thanks Fiona. Just 3 numbers I want you to remember. 91, that's the 91 events. 26, which is the total expenditure we incurred, and 3.2, which is 3.2 million of additional outside visitor spend. 91, 26, 3.2. Thanks.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, John. Councillors, any questions? So for those who haven't read the report, it's good reading. And I just want to say congratulations because, and you've hit the nail on the head there, John, 91 events. 3.2 million and for an expenditure of 26,000, which is, I would say, really good value for money. So welcome, well done for delivering that to our communities. Terry.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, congratulations. I just want a quick one around the Creative Coromandel. Have they engaged with the new Destination Coromandel board recently? Have you met with them?
Kia ora, Terry. Yes, we haven't actually met the new board. Looking forward to meeting the new board. But now that we've released this impact report to council, who you are our main partners, I'll be emailing it this afternoon to Hadley and the team at DHC and asking him to give that to the new board, and we'll be looking to have a kōrero dialogue with them. We work
Fantastic.
quite closely with them.
Yeah, I think they'd be real keen to see the work that's gone on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Martin, please.
Are you planning on having another one this year?
Yeah, yes, we are. And actually, I haven't said, so this year, our Art Beach Festival will be powered from the District Events Fund. So council awarded us 25,000 to run this festival this year. So we're in the planning stages right now. Last year, this was mostly funded from REF, Destination Horehi Coromandel, 20,000, and then Lottery Community Grant.
And that kicks off September?
Yes, September to December. So we're planning now. Yeah. And this year we're going to be building in workshops as well. That will be now 5 different wards around Arohi. And that'll be under the Artbeat brand.
And that's shoulder season, which is, I'm sure, will be welcome.
Yes, shoulder season.
All right. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you once again.
Kia ora.
91, 26, 3.2 million.
Money man.
Well done, Matua John. Rob Boston, please.
Morning. My colleague Rod is going to present our submission this morning. My hearing problems probably preclude me from answering or hearing some of the questions you might have. So this is Rod Leversit. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Yeah?
We can, thank you.
Great. Right. Good morning and thank you for the opportunity to address the council this morning. We've previously provided documentation via TCDC CE and staff. This has identified why we're in the funding shortfall position and the steps that we're taking to seek your support. And following on from the last item of correspondence sent to councillors last Wednesday, referring to the Wangata Community Pool and the annual plan submission of 25-26. Today, we're here to make a verbal submission for consideration by the council. In simple terms, providing we experience no unexpected expenses, the pool can remain open and operate with appropriate staffing ratios until 20th July 25, when we receive our annual grant of 88K. This proposed financial solution that we're putting forward is based on our profit and loss forecast ending 31 March 26. Running costs of the pool are $507,000, less income of $179,000, sponsorship of $5,000 and TCDC grant under the current funding agreement of $88,000. So that's $272,000 in budgeted revenue. The shortfall is $235,000. If we remove depreciation as a one-off kind of thing to try and help through the funding this year, the total funding required is $139K, and that's what this request is all about. Our proposal to TCDC is that we operate the pool July, August, September 25 on the 88,000 grant. So we have high operating costs, obviously, through the winter months with the heating. We then asked TCDC to provide 3 payments of $46,000 each in the following quarter. So that's October through December 25, January through March 26, and April through June 26. So during 2025, the Pool's Management Committee will continue to communicate with TCDC and to ensure we are able to make an operational financial application for the 26-27 year. So in simple terms, I just want to reiterate that we are looking for additional funding to the total of $139,000. So any questions regarding that, please?
Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Rob. Councillors, any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Hi,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you, guys, for the information. Can you just explain to me, this is an OPEX spend through council, why the increases? Are you complying to some sort of standards, or what's caused it?
Yeah, good question. So we are, I guess, looking against the Thames pool, and we did do a comparison with them, but we're also conscious of the fact that our funding agreement that we have in place is around certain staffing arrangements and the requirements to have staffing to pool safe requirements. So to do that requires the additional funding, whereas previously we have run with lower staff numbers, but clearly that's not an acceptable way forward. And just for health and safety, it's absolutely critical that we fund and staff correctly.
Thanks, Rod. Martin, please.
Thank you. Is this a common situation, or increasingly common around the country, with pools having to get up to pool safe, or is there a mix of pools that are?
Look, pools are a community asset, and if we look all through the country, pools are funded by the ratepayers. There's no way you can run a pool on the income that you generate through sales. That's the answer. And we've spent a huge amount of time and money getting that pool looking $1 million. I mean, just go in there, and it's exciting to go in there to see it. We've got the sparkling blue water. We've got it all ready to go. We now just need to keep it open. We need the people through the door. It would be just such a tragic thing to not keep it operating. We've got great staff, great patrons. We just need your help to keep it open.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Morrissey, and then I've got Robin, please. Councillor Sinclair online. So Councillor Morrissey first.
Thanks, gentlemen, for your presentation. I read that email you sent out a couple of weeks ago, and the urgency wasn't in that email for immediate funds. It appeared that you could survive until the next annual plan, when budgeting could be allocated to Whangamata by a targeted rate. I remember that being in the email, by a targeted rate. Has that changed, or is that email not worded quite right?
The email is correct. We can get through, but there's nothing left in the pot. So it's critical we know that we've got funding coming through to maintain it, if that makes sense.
I just heard then, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can get through, but it will exhaust your resources until the annual plan, when the budget can be addressed.
We will need funding to keep it open. Yeah.
So a lot of, it's staggering, the cost of that pool, $500,000 annually to keep it functioning. There is an agreement, you get a grant from the community board.
Yeah, 88.
And it's just a grant.
Yep.
The conditions that go with that grant mean that you've got to have life-saving people working at the pool at all times. Is that a condition of getting that grant, is it?
Yeah, the grant is that we must have pool safe accreditation.
Has that always been the case?
Yes. Yes, the pool accreditation came in, we got that probably 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. It just, Yeah, okay. It just seems strange to me that by virtue of getting a grant that those conditions are imposed on you. I would have thought it would have been less of a concern for council if they were just grant. It's not their pool,
Correct.
it's the community pool.
Yep.
Is there a staff member here that can tell me if that's standard procedure around the rest of the district, that we meet those standards when we give a grant?
Are you,
Through you, Mr. Chair, it did come up at the community board discussion, and I understand that it was something that's been applied to a newer funding agreement, but I can have a look right now.
Right. It just thanks, Brian. It just is sort of a bit of news to me that by virtue of giving a grant, we impose those conditions on the pool when we're not actually running the thing. We're just supplying a grant.
Can I just do a point of clarification here? Having had a lot of time with pools, it's a national requirement. It's a government requirement throughout. Everyone has to do it. If something happens in a pool and you haven't done it, the people who are running the pool are facing prosecution.
I don't doubt that, Gary, that there's probably something like that in place. It's just that by virtue of giving a grant, do we have the right to impose those conditions, or are we even interested in imposing those conditions?
It's just repeating what the legal requirement is, that's all.
I think that's helpful. Thank you, Gary. Robin.
Yes, thank you. I guess the big thing, because this isn't a community, this is a community pool and not a council asset, I'm unsure at the moment about the usage of the pool, you know, who you've got, how many staff you have, and I know that that is information you might not have at your fingertips right now. You've got all of our email addresses, you've previously circulated information. I wonder if you could just circulate that to us, just to let us know who's using the pool, like approximate numbers. I don't want to know names and addresses or anything like that, and just the number of staff would be really helpful in this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Rika?
Yeah, thanks.
But before I come to you, did you want to respond to Robin's request before we move on to the next question?
I couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear it.
Okay, it's really what Robin was saying was really loud over this side, but you couldn't hear it over there?
Probably a bit slower, Robin.
Robin, do you mind repeating your question, please? We're just having some tech issues here with hearing.
Sure. My question relates to who is using the pool, because we as governors potentially issuing a new grant or new funding have no visibility on who uses the pool. We don't know how many staff you have. So I recognise that you might not have that information today, but if you would be able to email us to let us know your user, who you're using the pool, opening hours and staff, that would be really useful.
Rod, did you catch that?
Yes, we can provide that information. Yeah.
Thanks, Robin. Appreciate it. And Rika, please, and then Terry.
Thanks. Actually, Councillor Morrissey asked all of my questions around the grant and whether there were tags applied to it. So I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple of points. It is a community pool and the community wants to pay for it and look after it. No problem there. I think the reason for this increase is around the compliance that they have to meet. So they went to Thames and said, what are you doing? We want to align our business to make sure we get the accreditation the same. And even though the numbers come out a lot lower, that this is only trying to meet whatever the compliance is to run the pool nowadays under the rules. Where they were done in the old days, there was less compliance. And I think you've gone through the numbers and said you've got to have so many lifeguards here and you've got to have a manager and control, you've got to have all these things. And that's why the dollars have come up. We don't want it to come up, but we're having to meet this compliance thing. So it's the problem that we're dealing with nowadays, and that is health and safety dictate the rules.
Terry. Delhi, please.
So I'll ask a question. So would council not fund something that wasn't compliant? So I think if we turn that question around, I think as a council, would we fund something that we knew wasn't compliant with national rules? I think that's turning that question on its head. Would that be your understanding, that any body that was going to give you funding would refuse to if you weren't compliant?
Well, under the current funding arrangement where we get the 88,000, we have to put in a report on an annual basis. And part of that is to say that we have complied with the pool safe requirement. And so getting pool safe was a mission in itself. So, having got it, it's obviously in our interest to maintain it and to keep open the lines of funding that clearly any pool operating in the country needs support from their ratepayers, council.
So therefore, if you were seeking funding from someone like Lotteries, would they also refuse to fund you if you weren't compliant?
I don't think that's come up. No, because that is around CapEx. We don't go for operating. We look to you guys, of course, and our trading. And our trading income will improve. There's no question about that. But we've cut this budget back. We did a budget against the TC, the Thames pool, and it came up with a fairly chunky number. We've pared this right back. And as I said earlier, taking out the depreciation, it's kind of unwise, but it's the way to get it across the line to see if we can bring you guys on board to help us through this time. We don't think we're asking for a huge amount. I know it's a lot of money, but I don't see it as being over the top.
Thanks, Rod. John Grant, please.
Thanks very much, and thanks for coming along with the submission. My question is really just trying to get an understanding as to how much data you actually collect. I'd be really interested to know the number of people who use the pool over that winter period of time where it is quite costly to run, and particularly how many of those are unique visits. So trying to sort of understand how many are repeats and how many of them are, just how many individuals come, not necessarily how frequently they come, but how,
we do keep full data.
And how many of them are within your area and how many of them are from out, so trying to understand visitors versus residents, I guess.
Yeah, we don't record out of town versus our catchment area. But we do record, we're now recording even down to sort of hourly breaks to try and get an indication and to see if there are any periods where it's constantly underused, where the cost of keeping it open is greater than the income that we can expect. So when we have overheads that don't go away, you can't close a pool down, for example, and not run the plant and hope to keep your water quality. It would just go out the door, and therefore you would then be in a situation where you'd have to pump it and refill it, and it takes a week to get your chemical balances right. We've got them absolutely perfect. We don't want to lose that.
Are the majority of your costs though in the heating of the pool?
Staffing is
heating.
Staffing is the most expensive, and heating comes in.
Right. So if you did actually close down for a period, it would reduce costs. Obviously,
it would reduce costs in the heating, running the heat pumps, but we would continue to have to run the plant to keep the water chlorinated and clean. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one point, John, on that. If we do close the pool, or we just go for reduced hours, that affects staffing. And it's very difficult attracting good staff. And at the moment, we've got really good staff. We've got 2 full-time, if you like, and we've got 3 part-time casuals. If we had to shut the pool down or reduce the hours, we would then probably lose our part-time casuals, and because we need to keep the full-time. If we had to lose one of the full-time, recruiting them back is really difficult, and then training them up again. So it's a bit of a catch-22. you know, if you close down for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, my questions are a little bit loaded, Rob, because what sits in behind this, and I'm sure you appreciate that there are a lot of other areas around the Coromandel that will be listening with interest from their own pecuniary interest of their own local pools. And so the question is a broader one than just the Whangamata pool. And, you know, that's sort of areas that we just need to really understand how many people are we actually seeing a service provided for the costs that are being generated, and what implications does that have in a wider sense to other pools that we also have similar requests for?
Thank
So,
you.
sorry, if I just to cover users, you know, surf clubs, swim club, learn to swim, you know, lane swimmers, you know, people that are there all the time, aquafit for our older people. I mean, these are all different classes of groups that are through there every day of the week.
Thanks, Rod. We've got Gary, Robin, Terry, and then I think we'll draw a line under it. You've made a really good case, but we'll draw a line under it after. So
the point that
Gary.
Terry made that needs to be reinforced is the community are quite happy to have targeted rates. They're out there saying, we want this, we will pay for it. Just give it, we'll pay extra rates to keep the pool going as it should be kept going. And I can't see any problem with that. Now, some other areas may have problems with that, but the reality is Whangamata wants to keep the pool and it's a very great asset. And when the terrible weather was on Easter and everything, the number of out-of-towners that used the pool was extraordinary.
Yeah.
They were saying you couldn't use the sea. It was so great to have this. And it's something that the community wants to keep going and fund it by targeted rate.
Yep.
Thanks, Gary. Robin, please, and then Terry.
Councillor Gottlieb's comment actually goes to the root of what I wanted to know, and that what evidence do we have for community support? So I don't doubt that the people who come and use the pool really enjoy the pool, but if we are talking about rating the entire community, it would be good to know how the community has been canvassed about this, because obviously we didn't ask in the annual plan if this was something that they wanted to be rated for. So I don't know whether there have been groups come to the community board. I don't know whether the community board has an opinion. So it's unfortunately less of a question and more of a registration of a little bit of discomfort of wanting more information about how the community has supported this. But I will phrase that as a question. How have you gathered the information across the entire community to know that this is something that they are happy to be rated for?
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah.
Terry, you want to?
Yeah, just to help answer that, Robin, is the recently targeted rate of $500,000 to fix the pool up, totally supported by the local community. This here we didn't know about. It should have gone into the LTP, annual plan, sorry. And it's an OPEX, so it doesn't come through us, it goes through staffing, and it hasn't popped up there, and so we've missed out. Now, we've looked at our discretionary fund and says, can we, not discretionary, our, what's it called? Retained earnings. You know, we would think, well, can we help and do it out of that? But that's just been exhausted because we've had no projects and to be able to get retained earnings. So we're struggling to find a way to fund this, quite honestly, but we're prepared to pay for it in some way.
Thank you, Terry. All right.
Just to let you know that 33,000 swimmers, I think last year, was that right? 33,000 swimmers, swimming events. So it's used really well. It's not like it's sitting there half used. It's used very well. Sorry.
Thank you, Terry. All right, Rod, thank you. And Rob, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Right, we've got no more public forum that we're aware of. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please, to receive? Rekha and Deli. All those in favour? Thank you. All right, moving on. Any items not on the agenda? All right, there being none, we'll go to minutes for confirmation, please. Oh, any conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, there being none, we'll go to minutes for confirmation. So page 3. Okay. Sorry, we'll go to page 4 for the resolutions. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please, for items 1 and 2 to receive the minutes? Ellie and seconder, Terry, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. And then item 3, the Tairua Pawanui Community Board recommendation from 28th of April meeting. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please, for that one? Terry, thank you. Gary, all those in favour? Thank you. Item 4, Thames Community Board, mover and a seconder, please. Martin, seconder. Oh, okay. So we'll get a seconder and then I'll open it up.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Robin. And Rekha, you have a question.
Yeah, so on page 22, we're talking about the discretionary budget. And then it says that the deputy chair declared a conflict of interest and withdrew from the table. But then I see that he's made a series of moving and seconding some of the and voted against some things. So I'm just unclear on how to follow that. Bottom of page 22.
Through the chair. So Deputy Johnson did have a conflict with one of the applications, but then he stepped up for that one, and then he came back for the rest of the applications,
Okay.
and the resolution was done in parts.
You happy with that?
Yeah,
Is that
it's just very difficult to follow as you
Yeah.
read it.
Understand.
Through the chair, the governance advisor that was there for that meeting is happy to look at just changing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Could I put that to the vote, please? All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Item 8, we've got 8, 9 and 10. We've got 3 TCDC council meetings. Could I get mover and a seconder for all 3, please? 8, 9 and 10. Terry and Delhi, mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay. External minutes, committee meetings for confirmation. These will be starting page 42, please. So we've got Haraki Golf Forum minutes, and we'll do item 1. Actually, no, we'll do items 1 and 2 together, and I will move both of those because I was at both of those meetings. It is just to receive. Yeah. Could I get a seconder for those, please? Martin, thank you. Any questions or clarifications about the contents of the minute? There being none, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Awesome. Item 1.8, workshop notes for receiving, page 60. So,
Very happy to move that.
thank you. So mover Martin, seconder Rekha. All those in favour? Aye. Thanks, team. Right. Okay. Item 2.1, Thames Coastal Protection formal request to Waikato Regional Council, which is page 62. Good morning, Mo.
just before Mo starts, sorry, Mo. I've noticed that we've got a tendency when we're moving a motion that a lot of people don't say anything. And I mean, it doesn't matter quite so much when it's just receiving or whatever, but when you know, all those in favour, there's two people saying aye at the table. And I really think we need to be a bit better at that, particularly when we get into some of these gnarly topics, and maybe even a show of hands physically, so we actually know who is voting for something. Just something, I think we've got a bit lazy. So I think as we get into some very important decisions over the next few months, we need to be a bit better at our ayes and nays and who's against.
Thank you, Nellie. It's a good point. Okay. So Mo, Eamon's still away today?
That's correct, Your Worship. He's had a bereavement in the family, so I'm fronting off the report on his behalf.
Thank you. All right, so I'll leave it to you to give us a summary, please.
So I'll take the report as read and I'll be happy to answer any questions, but the crux of the report is to seek council approval to commence dialogue with Waikato Regional Council regarding incorporating aspects of the Thames Coastal Resilience Protection work into the Waihau Valley scheme as part of their 2027 long-term plan and also Council's long-term plan. Discussion has already occurred at staff level and I was part of those discussions, and we've got a very good understanding at staff level. But the request from council needs to formally go through to Waikato Regional Council for them to consider that as part of their planning process.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, the specific resolution on page 62, so resolution number 2, we're specifically asking your advice and your political judgment about how to go about asking the question, whether you're looking for us to sort of bluntly make the request or whether you're asking us to potentially soften that to commence discussions or something of that nature. So really looking after looking for your political views about how you would like us to commence that process.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
We can't really proceed with this until we get a tick off from Waikato Regional Council. Is that correct? Well, then we can't proceed with anything without their tick.
So what we're asking, so the report that is attached to this talks about who should actually take responsibility and fund the infrastructure, and the law is open on that. It could be either TCDC or it could be Waikato Regional Council. And what the report is saying is there's some good reasons why it actually might be Waikato Regional Council. I think the challenge at the moment is asking that question outright potentially gives you an outright no. So what we are looking for the political guidance on is how would you like us to do it? Would you prefer a softer approach or would you like us to just actually ask that question?
I've got Delly and then Terry, please.
When I read that, nobody really wants to pay money for anything. And when I read that, I considered that it could be something along the lines as commence discussions or commence negotiations. I feel like you do, Aileen, that if you knock on the door and say, right, will you pay for? I think we need to entrust staff at a high level to have a discussion / negotiation, and maybe that wording needs revising.
Thank you. Terry?
Yeah, mine's around clarification, really. I'm just trying to get my head around the boundaries. I understood that the Thames area was in part of the Piaiko Waihau scheme, any rate, for flooding. Now that's water off the rivers and the land, I understand. So this is looking for permission to go coastal. Is this what I'm trying to get my head around? Because it's always been in the Piaiko Waihau Piaiko scheme for flooding, but this talks about coastal inundation. So is that the new space that we're looking about? Who can help me?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Because this was developed as part of the shoreline management planning process, but physically doing the work, WRC is better placed to do it as part of their scheme as opposed to council undertaking a separate piece of work.
Right, because when I was on the Coromandel Councilman Committee, Thames was out of the picture. We went down as far as Tapuru, is that right? It's up north, just north of Thames was the line that we went from there north in terms of any flood mitigation going on. So Thames was always separated out. So now I'm just trying to get my head around whether this is moving now into a coastal discussion as well. That's my question. Thank you. Thank you for your.
Martin.
If I may, so part of the Waihao Valley scheme does include coastal protection currently, because if you head along, cross over the Kopu Bridge, there's obviously stop banks along there that are part of the Waihao Valley scheme. So there is already some coastal protection as well as the Waihao and Piako rivers. Sorry?
CMA over there. Coastal Marine. Is it into that? Was it on?
Terry, flick your mic.
Sorry, Martin. I just asked the question.
River
the CMA comes in.
River and coast.
River, I understand, but coastal separates normally.
Yes, it includes, if you have a look on page 69 at the bottom of the page there.
Yeah.
Talks about Waikato Regional Council has an existing level of service that it currently rates for. The level of service is protection against tidal inundation for a 100-year event.
Right.
So that includes coastal marine area and river.
But is that in the Waihao Piako scheme?
Waihao Valley scheme.
Yeah, okay, right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. But that doesn't include this part down here.
Doesn't.
And I guess the point being, whoever, so this is grey as to whose responsibility it is. And whoever takes it on is basically having to do an LTP amendment to put in place new provisions. So it's either them or us.
Would the LTP amendment depend on the timing of when it's, because none of this is going to happen quickly, is it?
No, so well, whether it's an amendment or just in the LTP in its normal cycle, it may well be the LTP in its normal cycle. The point being, it requires a change to the long-term plan as it specifies on page 69.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Martin.
So this is really, I can paraphrase the report, this is really dipping our toe into the water to regional council, but obviously also be approaching central government. Well, that's already been, it's already ongoing, as well as potentially ratepayers. So it's how can we look to afford to do the coastal protection, which obviously is starting with Thames, but will cover other areas of the peninsula. So we're trying to investigate how it might be all be funded.
I think this is more specific to Thames because there's an adjoining scheme. I don't think if this is yes, the Waikato Regional Council will do this. I don't think you can then go, therefore, that means something else on the. I don't think it's a precedent. Put it that way.
True. Yeah.
It may be a precedent for them though.
The WC for it to be outside the Waihao scheme, but a separate.
They may have other schemes with this similar issue. So while this is probably not a precedent for us, it could well be a precedent for them.
Right. Thank you.
Peter, please, and then
thanks. So my reading of this is it's definitely not about how it's funded. It's about where the responsibility should lie. One of the impressions I have is that all the work we have done with the shoreline management plan and the plan that has developed has been very consultative, consulting the communities and kind of at every step of the process. And so I would encourage us to, so there's two things. Firstly, I think it's absolutely appropriate that we should be talking to Waikato Regional Council because the issue of inundation with Thames not only has the impact from the sea level rise in an area which is part of the Waihao River scheme, but also the impact of the Karakia stream, and which is a WRC responsibility. So I think it's absolutely appropriate that we should be talking to WRC. But in the spirit of the way we have tackled this to this point in highly consultatively, I would strongly recommend that we maintain that type of approach around this and ensure that we are doing it with dialogue and consultation rather than anything that looks like black and white. You know, this is fact. This is what you have to do, sort of thing.
Thank you, Peter. Delhi. Terry, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, so we go back to Mayor Gowdy's time, and when this came up, when we spent $1.9 million going through this coastal plan discussion, and it was raised then around the Waihao flood scheme then. So again, this talks about including elements. So that's what I'm trying to get my head around. What are the elements? If we're talking about moving boundaries, or we're just bringing the coastal line into the discussion? Because when the money was put up front, it was said then that there was going to be some discussion around teams and how it fitted into that model. So if you can give me some clarity around what the elements are.
Mo, you want to have a crack at that one?
I'll need to do some research, Lynn.
Sure.
I don't think I'll be able to answer that.
Yeah.
So if you have a look on page 63, there's a bunch of bullet points there, which sort of break it down into pieces. And I think if this is a negotiation and we do it engage and have dialogue in a consultative way, you could see a scenario where there's a bit of a mix and match that, you know, regional council could take on pieces, TCDC could take on other pieces, and there's a breakdown there that lends itself to sort of splitting out into the different respective organisations. And I'm sure when you get further down into the components, when you start to think about pumps versus a piece of rock wall versus a sheet pile or whatever, I'm sure there's also options when you get down to that kind of granular level. But I'd leave that to the engineers who know what they're talking about, as opposed to me who knows enough to be dangerous.
Thanks, Aileen. Delhi, please.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were having the public consultations on the SMP, and at the time the question was asked of Royal Haskening, who did the work. Did the scope include fluvial modelling? And it didn't. So even though the focus here, and it was really good what you've just said, Aileen, because, you know, at the granular level, there will be elements of overlap and different responsibility. So we're talking about Thames at the moment, we're talking about the Waihao Valley scheme, but I can see that the same conversation may be had in other areas of the district. So that the approach to, we don't want to frighten off WRC, we need to have a very, very good relationship around this, because there are river interfaces and harbour interfaces, which is their jurisdiction, that will interact with our shoreline management plan. So it's actually quite a delicate little dance that we need to have, and have WRC on side with a lens to the entire district.
Delicate dance. I think you're absolutely right, but I think dance we must, because I don't see any way that we can move this forward without partnering in one way or another. The question that is in front of us is how we do that, isn't it? So, John Grant, please.
Thank you. You know, this is a big subject, and you know, I think that we should be spending, as a council, a lot more time on this particular topic, because there is huge ramifications. You know, it's the iceberg that sits with all the mass underneath the water, and in this particular case here, I feel very uncomfortable as a councillor without clarity
without 100% clarity who ultimately takes responsibility. And the longer we play and the longer we dance, the more uncertainty we create for the area. And we've seen cases of this in the recent Gabriel situation where there was crossover between various entities and it wasn't clear exactly who was responsible for those. So my view is absolutely we should do it with diplomacy, but we should absolutely do it with a mind of getting an outcome and a clear view around that. And I think we also need at the same time to get clarity around our own shoreline management plan as to where the boundaries of that lie, where the funding for that lies. And I know that I'm sort of saying that we need to have a perfect sort of scenario in a situation where you're unlikely to ever get one. But I think it does deserve clarity around exactly where the costs lie for this, because then decisions can be made more correctly around whether things proceed or they don't proceed, and people can be communicated, because I think that's our responsibility to make sure that that is 100% clear. And leaving it in any area of doubt, I think, is something that we should avoid with all effort.
Thank you, John. Really good points. I think the clarity that has been a number of councillors expressed, we need clarity, is going to entirely depend on WRC staff and our staff working together on those different elements, because the responsibility for each one of those elements might be different from the next one in the list. And we don't know the answers to those yet, and we won't know until WRC staff and our staff have worked collaboratively together. And the question is, how do we ask WRC to work with us on this? And, you've made the point, John, with great diplomacy. And I think that's absolutely right. But I think we have to engage as early as we can at a governance level, and so that the staff can get on with their jobs and get some clear direction on the work that needs to be done by our staff and by WRC staff. Martin.
But just to clarify, so WRC have been, particularly staff and elected members in this current triennial, have been involved with the SMP project all the way along. So I just sort of feel if anyone was listening to this and didn't know, they would kind of think that WRC didn't know anything about this project, but WRC staff and elected members have been heavily involved with this for the last 5-6 years. So, and part of that involvement was also, there wasn't just the engineers there was policy people and finance people, and that this is now WRC saying, hey, maybe the White House scheme is a way to be able to fund this. So I think that really what we're asking WRC is for their staff and our staff to do some work to see if that Waihau Valley scheme is the appropriate mechanism to fund some of the work. I hear what John's saying about wanting 100% certainty. Yeah, I'm not sure if we ever have 100% certainty within council, but this is the way of saying this might be a mechanism to be able to fund it. So they have been involved heavily right up until now.
That's partly true. Peter.
Yes. So just a couple of points, but first of all, I probably have a slightly different take than Councillor Rodley. I don't think this is asking us to is asking about funding at this stage. It's about who is taking responsibility for the overall decisions that are going to get made around this. Further down the track, the result of those decisions will then determine funding. The second thing is, I am aware that the government has yet to land on a position around their role in these issues with places like Thames and Hawke's Bay and Wellington and South Dunedin and Westport, etc., etc. And that is obviously going to be a critical thing in the mix for us when we finally come around to decisions about what we can afford to do or not afford to do. And the third thing I would want to draw people's attention to is in the report on page 99, at the bottom of page 99, the issues that require consideration. And I think that's a really good shopping list for us as people who are providing governance over this thing, to actually acknowledge that those are questions that we're going to have to get our heads around. They're questions that we're going to have answers to before we make any decisions that potentially impact upon our ratepayers and what have you. And there's there's 10 or 15 questions there that are very good questions for us as in the governance team.
Thanks, Peter. I couldn't agree more. Essentially, if we're going back to the resolution here, I think the answer from council and from where I sit is that yes, we do need to ask WRC as soon as possible to be a part of this discussion. And when I said to you, Martin, that it was partly true, yes, WRC have been involved in the SMP program all the way through, so that they are aware of it. Where this is different now is that if you look at the bottom of the Karakia stream, the top end of the proposed Thames protection, it's very clear that if we go and build protection from inundation, we run the risk of basically blocking the exit path for any water that's coming down off the Karakia stream. And it's that fluvial water that has not been a part of the SMP up till now. That's where the questions lie. Is it our responsibility? Is it WRC's responsibility? Or is it shared responsibility between us? And which parts of it fall for them and which parts of it fall to us? So if we come to, for example, in that fluvial area, the Karakia stream, if there are property purchases that are involved, that may be us and not WRC. So we need a lot more information. We need the teams to be working together. But the first part is let's ask WRC to be a part of this carefully, slowly, but let's get the question in front of them if we can.
Can I just raise a point that
Sure.
They talk of the two relevant legal opinions. 3.278, there's Asher KC, he was a High Court and Court of Appeal judge, says it is the Regional Council responsibility. That's clearly said. And Simpson Grierson, who I don't think have judicial input into this, really say it's the council. He doesn't. That does not refer to Asher's opinion, and it's very clear. And it just seems to strike me that we are, if we, it was Simpson Grierson's advice for LGNZ, contrasted with Asher KC, who gave a very clear opinion, which the Hawke's Bay Regional Council accept, and my understanding others accepted that. So I just really think we've got to be very careful, because we are really bound by the Waikato Regional Council. How do we approach that? And let me say that you've mentioned there's not expert opinion on what's to be done. And are we going to throw resources into this, or do we sit back and watch? I don't know. I think it's just really in flux, and I'm not really keen on pushing it when we've got what I consider the best opinion saying quite clearly it's Waikato Regional Council that will be doing it. If you take the opinion for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council asked it, and that's a pretty clear opinion. Who I'd hold way before the Simpson Grierson one. Yeah, that's my little 2 pennies worth.
Yeah, of course.
Could respond to that. I think the issue with the legislation is that under the Soil Control and Rivers and Soil Conservation Act, it's a discretionary function of regional councils, and therein lies the challenge. So yes, they have that function under that act, but only if they choose to exercise it. And if they choose not to exercise it, then somebody else has the opportunity to do it, and therein lies the challenge. And when it comes to the regional policy statement, the regional policy statement has it being a shared responsibility. So although that's probably, I think you're correct about the legal opinion, the discretionary nature of that function is the thing that makes this tricky here, and therefore we need them on board in a discretionary manner if they're going to exercise that function.
So just a point of clarification around that. Wouldn't the behaviours of the regional council so far in regard to the work that they have done on the Waihao indicate that they have already taken that discretion and are doing that?
That's correct, they are. But what we would be doing is asking to extend the spatial part of that, of their responsibility. We're basically asking to extend it further.
Well, I'm happy to test the waters on that by moving that option 1 motion.
Thank you. We'll go to Robin first, and then if it's all right with you, we'll take that as moving the motion. Thank you, John. Robin, please.
Just wanted to stick my 10 cents worth as well, and then I can second your motion, John Grant. My perspective on this is that we have had a 5-year conversation with our communities around the entire peninsula regarding how we will deal with the risks and opportunities that our shoreline gives us. And the Shoreline Management Pathways project, which was adopted in 2022, was the first sort of official documented step to that. And this is the next logical step. And in the same way that we allocated responsibility to a few councillors to go away and think very deep and hard about the local waters done well, this council has also given the responsibility for a few of us to sit in the Thames Protection and Resilience working group and think about how we can progress this this project and the next important steps that are, we are making a decision in a succession of decisions. And so my support is really that this is very important. This is something that our community has high expectations around across the whole peninsula because of those conversations. And we can't sit back at this point and not do what the next logical step is. So I'm fully supportive of the way, the delicate conversations that we need to have, but we cannot ignore the conversation.
Thank you, Robin. We've got a mover in a second. We'll go to Peter and then we'll put the motion.
We need to amend it.
Yeah. So we're going to, Peter, go ahead. We're going to get the motion up on the screen so that we can make the amendments that we need to.
Thanks, Eileen. I would just also like to draw everyone's attention to page 64, where just the financial considerations, there is an implication that in moving or carrying this motion, that the enabling work on the Thames protection will be scaled back, which makes sense, with resources and budget allocated to other climate adaptation priorities in the district. And I guess I would just want to ensure that what we would be undertaking is actually critical to be undertaken at this stage, and we're not just doing something opportunistically because we've now got time and money and resource or whatever it is while we're waiting for the discussion with WRC to come to fruition. And so I just request that we get visibility, please, of whatever the proposed actions are on the resources and budgets being allocated to other climate adaptation priorities. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Sure. And 2. Right. So Rekha, we're just going to get some wording up on the screen. Did you have some
No, I actually was going to ask the same question that Peter just did. I need to get my hand up earlier, I think.
Okay. All right. Couple of minutes, team, to get these up on the screen.
Can I just respond to Peter's point and a
Go ahead.
couple of the others, just to keep some discussion going while we're updating this? I think it is important that we continue to lay out what our priorities are. And I think this strengthens our position because it clarifies where the responsibilities lie for this component. But we must, as part of those discussions, understand what elements are in and what elements are out. And I don't believe that we have probably been as clear in our communication on some aspects of this, particularly where we've been talking about some areas of coastal protection around Thames at the moment without having clear funding, because I believe that in the LTP, we stipulated that there needed to be 60% external funding for any of that work before our funding would be triggered. And, that leaves it very uncertain in regard to exactly what is in and what is out. So, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's really important that whilst we continue and have the rhetoric around our shoreline management plan, that the fundamentals of what actually makes that happen is funding, and we need to get clarification so that we don't increase expectations of something that we can't end up delivering. So I think this is just a really good starting point because it clarifies an element of this which is really important. And we need to, as I said before, try and reach clarity with the regional council as to their responsibilities and where they start and finish. And then where ours can then be focused and then start looking at how we actually fund some of the elements of things that we have been talking about.
Thanks, John.
So we making comment, are we? Or are we waiting for that?
Yeah, we'll just go ahead while we're just finalising stuff on the screen.
Things have changed in terms of what the proposal is about now. So, I'm just looking at thinking about regional council's view on this and thinking, is this going to cause a precedent for them? Are they a bit worried about that going forward? And also the Waihao Flood Protection Scheme is such a huge scheme with huge money in it. I've been to a few of those meetings. They're pretty strong about and robust about how they manage that program. It begins to see how they engage with us. So you're asking now us just to go directly to them, because the first one was about giving some staff direction. Is that right? You want us now to go directly to regional council?
I think it's going to happen on multiple levels. So there's request for the mayor to write to the chair of Waikato Regional Council. That's not a problem, as far as I can see, and then directs staff to seek engagement and dialogue with Waikato Regional Council, aiming to negotiate clarity about responsibilities. And it's hard to see how we can land on some decisions around funding until we know what the different elements are and where the responsibilities lie. Ailey, please.
Could I just suggest we reorder 3 and 4? So 2 is the decision, and then the letter becomes the beginning of the action, and then the staff action then follows. Yep. And just in terms of regional councils, the comment Councillor Walker made about regional councils and are they concerned? Absolutely, they're concerned. So nationwide, regional councils are actually very, very well organised. They have a company that they own called Te Uru Kahika that engages with government and advocates on their behalf. And the river scheme managers have worked on a business case that has collectively unlocked something like 300 million out of the Regional Infrastructure Fund into Regional Council river schemes. And there's, a little bit that's come into this district. But those are the sorts of mechanisms that the Regional Council can use to access Crown funding into these types of assets and protection going forward. And I think the 300 million that they've received, there's a report called After the Deluge, or was it Before the Deluge? I can't remember, but it's an excellent report. But it's a drop in the bucket in terms of what they need, and this must be an ongoing conversation with government into the future.
Thanks, Daly.
I'm
Okay.
comfortable with those changes.
As the
So-
seconder, I'm comfortable with those changes.
Thank you. All right, so we have a mover, Councillor Grant. We have a seconder, Councillor Sinclair. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Everyone's looking to Delhi. Did we do okay? So? All right. Okay. Councillor Gottlieb is abstaining. Is that the only one? I don't see why it couldn't be distributed, not at a formal meeting, but around to councillors. And do that. All right.
I'm sorry, what is being distributed around councillors?
There's a request from Terry to distribute a draft of the letter, the mayor's letter to the chair of Waikato Regional Council. Just send the draft out to councillors just for a look over before we send it, which
Yes,
I'm happy
please.
to do. Yeah. All righty. Mo, you've been awfully quiet. Thank you. All right, team, what I might suggest is that we go to morning tea now and we come back at 20 minutes to 11, 20 to 11 or 10:40. For those online, we'll take a break until 10:40 a.m. All right, thank you. Welcome back, teams. Who are we missing? Wait, a couple of seconds. Robin, are you back with us?
I am back.
Thank you. We're just waiting on Martin. Shouldn't be far away.
It's going to be about 5 minutes.
Is he? Okay,
Yeah.
in that case, we'll make a start. Hayden, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
The floor is yours, sir.
I'll take the report as read. The staff basically, so outside of an LTP and annual report, we do two budget revisions every year. We do an October one and a March one, and this is the March one. So basically, we're looking to sort of forecast the last few months of the financial year to sort of work out where we're going to land financially at year end. Overall, we are still across most activities, results are still favourable. It's just there's a few activities, waters, solid waste, slightly looking to be slightly unfavourable. Waters, we've sort of brought previous reports due to sort of some of the additional contract escalations and whatnot. They're looking to be a little bit over this year. And then the last one is in the council admin activity. We have a movement in our interest rate valuation, which is really just a book movement. So basically what sort of happens there is we've got a whole lot of interest rate swaps, and when the interest rates, currently our sort of weighted average interest rate across our interest rate swaps is about 3.7, I think it is. And when the interest rates move up, the value of our swaps, they get more valuable. When interest rates move down, they get less valuable. And I guess with what the government's done in the last 12 months is the floating rate has sort of started to come down, and so it kind of goes up and down, but like a yo-yo really. But it's really just a book movement, so there's not a lot we can really do on that front.
Thanks, Hayden.
But yeah, happy to take any questions on the reforecast.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Terry, go ahead.
Hayden, I don't see the Whangamata water meters. Am I supposed to see it somewhere? Sitting in a shed, I know they are.
Might be an unfair question for Hayden.
Yeah, through the chair, that's next year.
Starting next year now.
Yeah.
Okay. They'll be getting old, starting to get rusty. Okay.
Thanks, Luke. Peter, please.
Thanks. So Hayden, just a few questions. So first of all, overall, as we look at this, it seems that we're not quite tracking where we were wanting to be tracking. Just what impact is this report going to have for our ratepayers? Like when they digest this, what is going to be the impact?
So if you look at the P&L, or the comprehensive income statement, which has our revenue and expenditure in it, so basically there's a few items there that sort of like we're down on fees and charges, for instance, and so but there's some of that's got corresponding revenue decreases. But generally, across all of our activities, we're favourable. So what that'll mean is at year end, other than those couple of sticky sort of activities, at year end, we will be more than likely adding into our retained earnings at a district level. And I think at a local level, there'll be adding in of retained earnings, but on a far smaller scale. There's a lot of if you look at the monthly results, the financials for all of our local activities are, pretty close. I mean, 50 to 100K. There isn't as much, and sort of the district activities have far larger numbers involved, whereas the local activities tend to track far closer to budget.
Okay, so can I just
go ahead?
So you're anticipating that we, at the end of the financial year, we will be adding to retained earnings, but it will not be at the level that we were originally budgeting. Is that correct?
So we never budget to add to retained earnings. It's only if we're favourable that we add to retained earnings. If we're unfavourable, then we have to take from retained earnings. So yeah, the way we budget is to break even. But for instance, we've got $147 million of expenditure. So sometimes when you see like $1 million or $2 million variance, when you take that over 147 million as a percentage, it's quite, it's quite small.
I think one of the things that's highlighted to me, we continue to have some challenges with waste. So we've now just had something new pop up that we weren't expecting. Are you aware of any actions that are being taken to rectify? No, let me ask another question first. Given that, are we at risk with our 26, 20, the next annual plan coming up? Are we at risk of having misbudgeted the waste in that annual plan that we're currently working on?
I'll let Mo answer it, but having worked with the team, I don't think it'll be material. So the team are actively working. They're projecting that they'll be a little bit over, but they're actively working to try and be on budget. Solid waste does have some retained earnings that they would be able to draw on, but I'll pass it to Mo, but they are actively working to, because this is a forecast, so it's not, actual. So they've got 3 months of, I guess 2 months now of results to actually try and dial it back if they can and get in and land on budget.
Sure. Thank you. Mo?
Yep, through your worship and councillors. 2024-25 is the first full year for the new solid waste contract. And we don't have any historical data to base anything on. So when the tender report was presented to council before the current contract was awarded, we mentioned in the report that we will need to baseline the contract after the first full year because we could not provide for every single contingent because it was a completely new contract. So there are a few things that have come up in terms of budget figures and adjustments, and we are working through those, but we should have a good baseline for 2025-26 going forward.
Mo. Peter, does that help? Question?
Yes, it does, but probably, so given this and given the financial state of what and the surprises that we end up getting around waste management and I guess the commentary that I hear from public when you stand out on Pollen Street on a Saturday morning about the waste and tags and bins, it just seems to me that we haven't got waste functioning efficiently, and it feels like we haven't actually really got control over it. And I'm probably wanting to suggest that we work out how to tighten our governance over that particular contract so that we can just be confident that it is actually coming absolutely under control and it is performing to expectations. And yeah, because at the moment it's not, and it keeps biting us.
Thank you, Councillor. Rebecca, please.
Perhaps, Peter, my question may help. Looking at the commentary that you've got there around waste, and again, this probably is a question for Mo, but I can't look at you, Mo, and talk at the same time. And it's around the pay-as-you-throw tags. My question is, what are we doing to help or to encourage the contractor to perhaps take a stance to do some work in communications to engage with the public, to perhaps get them a little bit more excited about this offering, which in all essence, really people were turned off because the contractor was not operating as they should have in the early first year of that contract. It was just taking too long for bins to be collected. People didn't buy into the service. And I strongly believe that this is something that we should be pushing back to the contractor to get some comms out about. And it really concerns me that the contractor is also the owner of the competing independent bin service for collection. So what are we doing in that space, Mo?
Thank you, Rika. Through your worship, as I mentioned at the last council meeting, the issue around PAYT tags also seems to be a behavioral issue, where people have figured out that if they take a partially completed bin to an RTS, it actually costs them less than the $8 tag because they get the rubbish weighed and pay for the exact weight, so they could be paying $3 for a quarter of a bin. We can carry out promotions for people to use PAYT, but what we have observed is a behavioral issue in terms of people turning up at the RTS with partially completed bins and disposing it at a lower rate and therefore not using the tags.
Thanks, Mo. Delhi, please.
Thanks, Hayden. I think around the whole topic of waste, it's important to remember that success from an environmental point of view is actually a sinking lid on the amount of waste going to landfill. So success should look like people are throwing away less rubbish. So the revenue should decrease. Even the rubbish going to the RTS should decrease. So philosophically, but also financially, the two need to be looked at the same time. That success is that we're putting less crap into the ground and the revenue will drop. So we need to be aware that that contract may be worth less and less as time goes by.
Thanks, Delhi. It's a good point. John Grant, please.
Thank you. I look at this a little bit like I'd look at a P&L budget, and really try and understand why I should react differently to looking at these financials as to what I'd look at in my own business in regard to its performance up to a particular point in time. And what I'm looking for is the trends that are coming through and how we as a commercial operation respond to those trends. So if interest rates are declining and that is reducing income for us in places, then how are we cutting our cloth to adjust to those changing areas? So when I look through this and I see, small increase in rates, and I'm sure you have a handle over why we have been out by that sort of amount. And then, the significant variations on revenue in regard to fees and charges, and we've spoken about some of those areas. Overall, it sort of washes up to basically being pretty close to where we are. But is that trend one that will continue, or will we see some stabilization of rates and the fees and charges will continue to be a negative to our revenue line? But the one that worries me the most is the expenditure, because we are relying here on personnel costs, which are lower because we have been slower to recruit or not fill vacancies. And that could change. In fact, it may well be changing as we speak at the moment. And then we look at the areas such as depreciation and the questions that I sort of look at in regard to that line is how can we get that so wrong? Because that is just a straight percentage, I would guess, of our own assets that would be driving that. So my question to you is, what do we need to read into this in regard to it, and what what are we taking from what we're seeing in regard to changes to adapt to areas that are not performing as we expected, so that we are not biting into retained earnings and we are not setting ourselves up for future issues that could come through?
Yeah, so in this P&L, there's it's a mixture of capital and operational revenue. That's why we kind of split it out in the monthly results. So like, for instance, if I look at the fees and charges, I think we've sort of noted tag sales, RTS, building consents being down. But in saying that, there's also corresponding revenue drops. So in the building consents, for instance, there's less contractors that have had to be used. So there's sort of an offset there. Within the RTS, there's less waste going, tonnage going through, so there's been less expenditure there. So those two have sort of netted out. In terms of the like other expenses line, as I was saying before, 2 million of it is like an accounting adjustment, like a valuation. So it's not actually impacting, it's impacting the financial results, but it's not impacting the ratepayer as such. It's a sort of a book adjustment, I guess they call it. And each year that goes up and down based, as I was saying, on interest rates, and there's like little we can really do about it. Just that's where it gets sort of booked to. In terms of depreciation, there is that valuation exercise, but when it comes to budgeting, we use sort of what Burr will give us 12 months sort of in advance. And but when it comes to sort of, 12 months later, the inflation, we might have budgeted for inflation to be 3%. It ends up being 5% because of what's happened in that, 12-month period. That it gets a bit, we definitely working on sort of getting our depreciation closer, but forecasting inflation can be pretty tricky. And we rely on the experts from Burl to do it, and to be honest, they haven't been
very accurate.
No, but in saying that, there have been, there's always sort of reasons behind it, but yeah.
I guess the primary question I was really trying to aim to get across was, what can I take from what's in here as to what steps the council has taken to adjust to variations that are seen that will be of a long-term impact? Are there things that we can pull out and say?
In fees and charges, we adjusted revenue based on sort of forecasts for solid waste, I know, in particular. So we've already sort of adjusted that into our 25-26 annual plan. Some of the other areas, I guess, as we see the monthly results, we definitely go away and we try and do things better, I guess, on a monthly basis. So in the annual plan, the 25-26 annual plan, we've definitely, when we see something not quite going right, we go and adjust it accordingly. So, but like in terms of depreciation and that, inflationary figures that we use, we really rely on the experts, and if they get it wrong, then our annual plan's wrong. Yeah.
Thanks, Hayden.
Yeah.
I've got a couple more people waiting. Do you want to?
Last one?
Yeah.
So if for example, on your on those areas where you're talking about with interest rates and the impact of that, if we're going to be in that environment for some period of time, that is going to have a longer term impact than we expected.
Yeah.
So therefore, do we then have to make adjustments in other places? And I'm just trying to see where that level of thinking and that input to be able to minimise any longer term impact there could be on ratepayer costs.
Yeah, so the movement in valuation won't affect the ratepayer, but the underlying interest rates that we like the interest rate swaps we enter into. So we do obviously a lot of work with PwC in that space, and so that affects the finance cost line, which, as you can see, we've got slightly favourable to long-term plans. So we put a lot of effort into those that treasury work, so that interest rate swaps, like to have an average weighted interest rate of 3.7 or thereabouts is pretty good. Like if you were to think about interest rates, if you were to step back and go, where are interest rates tracking, or where they have tracked, we've always been under 4% for, even when interest rates went up to sevens and whatever, we were still tracking under 4% because of that treasury management. We put in those interest rate swaps, which basically fixed about 60% of our debt. So 60% of our debt was at the less than 4%. So that's where we put a lot of the sort of effort into. The valuation, like I say, goes up and down. Next year we could have if interest rates start going up, we could have a positive in there of $2 million, but it's really it's a paper movement. It's not real in terms of the valuation side of things. But where it impacts ratepayers is those actual finance costs, like making sure that we've got good coverage and we enter good interest rate swaps to protect them against the movement in interest rates, which we've seen over the last few years have been pretty, been tracking up. I know they're coming back down now, but yeah.
Thanks, Hayden. Questions from Robin, Martin and Terry, please. So Robin, go ahead.
It actually related to what Councillor Connell talked about before in terms of, yes, finances are very important and we need to pay heed to exactly what the forecast is saying and what our budgets are, and we need to keep an eye on that. But we do have competing plans, including the waste minimisation plan, that we also have made an undertaking to do. And so it's important to see the wood for the trees on that issue. And I absolutely support your comments, Dali. The other comment that I sort of wanted to make is that we have no control over independent operators in the waste system. We had no say and no control over who bought who. And there is, in fact, a second independent operator outside of our contractor who's operating within the district. And so I feel like there is some competition there, and I just wanted those things to be said and acknowledged. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Martin, please. Is it? Okay. Terry?
Yes. My question through the chair, Len, is most probably go to Luke, but through Hayden. Is that okay? So I'm just looking at on page 107, the Whangamata projects you've got there, and there's just 2 infrastructure projects, we've got no local projects. The Port Road project, understood, didn't attract a tender, but it doesn't say it's going to be moving into the 25-26 period as some of the other projects. Is this still on track to be finished this year? Maybe Luke.
Wasn't there a comment that the team were going to be looking at local contractors to do that? Because there was no successful tender. Have I got that right, Luke?
Yes. So through your worship, we have approached direct local contractors because we've already tested the market now. And so we're just looking to engage them directly. And it comes down to elements like their availability and to do the work in a tight time frame now. So there is some risk that we will go over into the new year at this point because of that delay. But we will have somebody contracted in place and underway. So we should be able to minimise that.
Okay, so at the moment you're looking at getting it done by July 1, but it might roll over.
It may well roll over because of that delay.
Okay, I need to understand that one. Thank you. And the other one was really around the Tairopoa Nui and the odour control plant, which is fantastic done. I see there's a 422,000 underspend. How will that money go into their retained earnings, or what will happen to that?
Only the operating costs associated to that will go into retained earnings.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. John Morrissey, please.
Well, I actually didn't want to ask a question, Len, but seeing as you've given me the chair,
I've got your name here.
Hey, I'll be honest. I share a few of the councillors' concerns around this table regarding solid waste, and if I could turn back the clock right now, I don't know. I mean, I know we were bound by the Waste Minimisation Act that was coming through from Parliament. We had to comply. But this tag thing has never been successful. It's never been brought into by the public. And we had these thoughts that people would actually leave private bins and come to TCDC and we get more pickups. Well, the exact opposite happened. And it's probably a trend that's still continuing. And the less that we have using TCDC bins, the more cost we're going to incur. I just wonder sometimes if we should actually even be doing curbside pickups and just leave it to a private contractor, manage our refuse transfer stations, and let a contractor who can obviously offer a very good service, because people, and I'll be honest, I am one, has opted to use a private contractor rather than the council system. I don't know if we should stay where we are, guys, and keep losing money, give it to a private contractor, keep our refuse transfer stations and be done with it. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, Len. I wasn't actually going to come out with that, but thank you.
I asked. I have a couple of questions for you, Hayden. Tourism Infrastructure Fund, the TIF funding, pops up in a number of these areas, and I'm just wondering what the timeline is on that, because it's coming to an end, isn't it? Or it's no longer available to us. So we've still got a number of projects which call on TIF funding. Is there a cut-off on that?
I'll have to pass that to Luke, sorry.
Yes, Your Worship, there is essentially a date that we're to deliver against, but it goes beyond this financial year. So we've actually got some space to move. And so the TIF projects that we're delivering largely are the public convenience improvements. We've had some delays around consents, but we're working furiously and well with our building consent team to drive through those. And they are going to be largely done by 30 June. There'll be a little bit of tail end stuff for those projects, but well within the funding envelope.
Thanks, Luke. That helps. Martin?
Yeah, if I may, just very briefly comment on Councillor Morrissey's. Okay. Around whether council should be doing the curbside collection, I guess my thought on that would be that we are bound by various government mandates around reducing waste, whereas a private operator probably isn't.
I comment on that.
Thanks, team. All right. Terry, and then we'll move along if we can, please.
Just one quick clarification. I see under Kopu Marine Development, there's $105,000 funded by Waikato Regional Council. Can you explain where that money's going?
Yeah, I can explain that. So Waikato Regional Council gave us some money towards Kopu, and at the close of the project, there were still some elements that we haven't quite completed. And so the money's been carried forward and Waikato Regional Council have funded it. I can talk to you offline about the components that we're waiting on third parties to assist us to deliver.
Thank you. All right, team.
Just one comment, and it's not going to be anything outrageous. Under the Kopu Wharf revenue, and probably the CEO can answer this better than anyone else, it says part of the problems that it's experiencing financially is a reduction in demand for services by reduced mussel production due to spat supply issues. I was unaware that Kopu Wharf was actually servicing the mussel industry and having to do with that.
Councillor Rodley's answered that for me. They're not actually servicing the spat out of there, but the vessels are now in the South Island, therefore they're not here to be serviced.
And I remember talking to Vaughan after this report was done, I think, and he was very pleased with the lift in business. I think he had 12 cradles, whatever they call them, and 11 of them had boats on and actively being serviced. So I think even since this was done, there's been a lift in activity there. He was very happy with it, very happy, looking for more staff. So, all right. Thank you, Hayden. All right, can I get a mover and a seconder, please, for page 104, items 1 and 2, receives and approves the March budget revision? Peter, seconder, Delhi, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Thank you so much. Thanks, Hayden. Item 2.3, memorandum of understanding or memoranda of understandings for Hawkeswood's and Robson's properties. Page 115, please. Okay, Brett, welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for memorandum of understanding with various owners who utilise raw water connection for the Oputanui to Matarangi water treatment plant. The agreements to use that water were formed when Matarangi was being developed independently and the water treatment system was set up by that developer. We have since taken that over, and under the new Tamata ROI requirements, we need to limit those people who take the water to raw water use only for stock feed. They cannot use it for domestic water. Originally, one of the residences was using the water for domestic. They since stopped that. And these now will form agreements with those residences that they will continue to use it only for stock water.
Thank you. Questions from Delhi and Gary, please.
I was actually going to say that it's kind of a no-brainer and we have to do this, and I was happy to move it.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Gary, did you have a question?
Well, that we've got agreement with the Hawkeswood people. They own 3 properties. Is there a separate one for DJ Robson?
There is 2 actual connections. The first one is for Robson's. The second one goes into a Hawkeswood property, but then feeds out to 2 other properties, and that's why we've called it adjoining and secondary. So it feeds off the one connection, but feeds 3 properties.
Because this agreement's between just the Hawkeswood, Amanda and John, and not the other party.
Well, there are different owners. So Robson's are separate, all right? But the other property, the 3 blocks of land that are taking water from that one connection are all owned differently by different owners.
But we've got one legal entity like Amanda and John signing this. That's all I'm getting at, because if it covers others, they're not included.
Yeah.
Sorry?
There are a total of 4 memorandums, not just one.
I only see one here.
That's right. There are 4. There's one for the Robson property.
Okay.
Then there's one that feeds off the other
You've
3
answered that.
connections.
Quite understand that. And the other thing is that in paragraph 28, the memorandum of understanding shall remain until terminated. And I'm just wondering, it could result in a bit of confusion, but you're talking of provided works in clauses 11 and 12, and there's a bit of a conflict there. Anyhow, someone drafted it. I wouldn't have drafted it that way, but so be it.
And my last comment is I do apologise for the spelling. We have corrected that in the final copies that have gone into ECM.
Is it pertinent to, should we be looking at that, or is it's all fixed? Okay.
It's just with regard to no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Peter, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just a simple question, I hope. So the water supply, the raw water supply, is to only be used for stock. Who monitors that compliance? Is that Tamata ROI? Is that us, or is it not monitored?
We have visually inspected the properties, and they are only being used for stock. The residences at these properties have their own tank water that they use. Our aim is that once a year we will go through and visually inspect again, and we are going to put meters on those lines just to see what sort of water usage they are using.
Thank you. Great answer.
Thanks, Peter. I have a quick question, Brett. These are memorandums of understanding with the current owners. What's the succession plan for if they sell the properties on? Why is it an MOU rather than an easement?
We already have easements for the land.
Yeah.
So they're already on the title. So that will continue on. I think there is a statement in the MOU about if they sell the property, then this memorandum continues on with the new owners.
All right. So that doesn't create any issues. We don't have to start all over again. All right. Thank you. All right. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please, for items 1, 2, and 3 on page 1? Was Delhi she did. All right. Thank you. All those in favour?
Sorry, who was the seconder? I did not see a hand go up.
Reka.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yep.
Thanks, Robin. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Item 2.4, district event fund applications. Kirsten, are you online with us? She's behind. What is this, a pantomime? Hiya, Mitch.
Good morning, councillors. We've got the District Events Fund application report for you. I'll take it as read. And basically, there were 7 applications received for the fund this time. None of them met all of the criteria for the District Events Fund. So the panel met and had a robust discussion about the events. And what we thought that what seemed like we all agreed upon was to provide some seed funding for a couple of events that one is a new event. It's been held once, and the other is an event that's making a comeback post-COVID. And rather than having the events come back to us year after year after year for smaller portions of funding, the 3 members of the panel thought that it would be a good idea to provide a one-off fund to 2 of the events to help them get a good start. And those 2 events were Ridge Runner Coromandel, which is quite a unique event held on the White Star Station up Colville. There's not a lot of events that do happen up in Coromandel Town, so we believe that has got real potential. And the other one is the Whangamatara Adventure Race, which has run quite successfully in the past. It's a staple of the event calendar, but it's making a comeback post-COVID. So those were our 2 recommendations. And with it being the last funding round of the financial year, there was some funds left over, and it was a decision to give some funding to the other events rather than have it unspent.
Thanks, Kirsten. Sorry, who's first? Martin, please.
Yes. Good morning. So when they were open for application, were people told about how much total there was available? And the reason I'm asking that is that it just seems interesting that Wings and Wheels Thames asked for 23,000 if they knew there was 31,000 available. And also 3 of them have put in multi-year applications. Were they asked to do that as well, or was that them being?
There is the ability to do that on the form. Like if we had a new event come to us that we hadn't had in the district before, we potentially could look at funding them the first year or 2 years on just decreasing scale. I think with the Wings and Wheels ones, the last funding round we did have Creative Coromandel get 25,000. So I think they probably just put their best foot forward.
Okay, thank you.
Rika, please.
Thank you.
Delhi. We've got you there, but a couple more before you, Terry, so we'll get there.
You're on the queue.
Good. Rika.
Can I go now?
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for this. I sort of read through this and I thought, have we got the criteria right? So, I look at this and I know that there's a recommendation to support some that sit outside of the criteria, and that might be a broader conversation and maybe not for now. But obviously we want to see events come back to the district and lively events. And hey, I love that we've got such a broad range of different events, some for the cinema, some for Wings and Wheels and things like that. So I think it's great that there are people out there that want to do this, but I just want to ask the question, do we have the criteria right? And the second thing, I look at this and I look at the recommendation, and something like Wings and Wheels, which have put in a significant request for money over 3 years, whether the recommendation to give them something like $2,000, is that even going to really help them create a successful event? So yeah, I have some questions around the criteria and whether we need to relook at that.
Thank you, Rika.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to talk to that just briefly, because we the way we're operating this budget at the moment is new in that we've brought it to council for decisions, and it's only open twice a year, which means that the event operators have to know it's available. They have to have an application ready. They have to know what they want to ask for money, and we've set quite an ambitious criteria because this is funded through the economic development budget, and the original purpose of the funds was to attract major events that brought economic benefit to the district. And so far, whether it's just the economy over the last 12 months, but the way we're operating this hasn't really enabled that, because we're getting the same events coming back to the fund, and it's difficult for to be used in a way that is flexible. So once we've made decisions on this report, we'd like to suggest bringing back to council some other options around how this could be better administered in the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Delhi, please.
Fabulous, and it's good to see that adventure race coming back too, because, and I understand, I mean, we do have to trust the panel as well, that you've really angsted over who gets what, and is it going to bring, people from outside the district in? It's not just going to be those people who live in that area. A quick question though about Ridge Runner. They sort of totally over 3 years asked for about 10. So how did we come to the 15? Not that I'm disputing it, but I'm just wanting to understand the thinking of how that got there.
It's a new event. It has good potential. They asked for 3 years worth of funding. There was a discussion around supporting that event operator with that event in a one-off way, so that they're told that they can't come back in future years. And that event operator also operates other events around the district, which are popular and well liked, but they'd made an application for this event. So yeah, that was the decision made by the panel.
So supplementary, there is, you go back to that person who's made the application and say, hey, look, this would be a one-off lump. We expect you to spread it over the 3 years. Don't come back cap in hand. But they are bound to use it on that event and not their other events.
That's right.
Yep.
John Grant, please, and then Robin. Thank you.
Thank you. So where do I start? I think I'll start by saying I absolutely support concept and the process, and the idea that, you know, we look at what we can do within our district to promote visitor attendance and, you know, all of the positive things that come from it. And so, you know, that sort of is very comfortable from my perspective. And then I have a look at the applicants for this event funding, and I look at our decisions around the event funding, and I start to get the wobbles, to be honest. You know, if you look at the first one, the Mercury Bay Film Festival, it's not a Mercury Bay Film Festival, it's a New Zealand Film Festival. And it runs right through the whole country at different theatres around the place. It's run by a commercial venture. It's not run as an event to bring people in. It's people that are interested in the French Film Festival or the British and Lion Film Festival, which I'm one of those. And I just don't understand why we're providing funding for a commercial business. So that's sort of the first thing. Then I look at the Bailey's Paradise Golf Classic, and I'm always keen on golf. I just don't get out there and play very often. And I know a number of people in the golfing world around the place, and they're always struggling for funding for their events. This is one event, and it's asking for all of their prize money to be funded. You've got Matarangi has a golf club that runs a number of events that are NZGA sanctioned, and Thames run one as well, as does the Mercury Bay Golf Club. So if we're doing one place, we should be applying that criteria to all. So I really struggle with why we're funding golf clubs for events. Matariki Whangamata, we have a terrific event in Mercury Bay for Matariki that is well supported. And again, it's around this consistency in our approach to things as to why we are, from a ratepayer perspective, providing funding for people to go to an event where, you know, they are celebrating something, but, you know, it's not an event fund to bring people into the district. They might argue and say some people might, but really, does it bring people here compared to other places? And the ones that start to probably make me feel a little bit more comfortable is the Whiti Run Fest and the Ridge Runner, because I do agree that those are things that are building for a long-term view and will bring a particular group of people and hopefully will come along. And then Wings and Wheels, and I look at the financials that they submitted with their application, which shows that they're making a huge surplus, and yet they're looking for funding. So either they have misconstrued some numbers within their application, or what on earth are they asking for money when they're making 60 odd grand out of the event so far? So those are my comments. It makes me feel very uncomfortable in regard to some of the decisions that have been made. So maybe you can lift my comfort. I don't know, but
Yeah, I guess I can respond to a couple of those. To your point around whether the event operator runs a surplus, I think we just have to accept that this event is targeted at commercial events, and those operators always want to run a profit. And around the country, public money is spent to subsidise events, whether they are the America's Cup or small events in the Coromandel. So that's sort of a given. We would like that the funding is used to support new events and attract new events to the Coromandel. But as I alluded to, we have to work with the applications that we receive. The four ones of $2,000 were a decision was made to distribute the balance of the funds to those groups, and we could table an option now where we actually I'm forgetting. Oh, Brian, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, Mitch, just to jump over through you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify the decision's yours. This is our recommendation, and so these can change. I watched this report land, and it was pretty messy the last time. And my observation of this is, to Rekka's point, nothing's meeting the criteria. We could go away and look at the criteria. In the past, this was administered internally by staff. It was a fund to be more flexible to, I guess, do what you're talking about, John, where we use it to best attract the right events to the district. The council made a decision to do it this way, and I think the way to fix that, as Mitch has touched on, would be at the I think in June we're bringing you a grant funding wider report that captures all of your grants, and this is one of them, to discuss whether you want to keep doing it this way, which is quite hard to administer because, yeah, how do you select how much should go to which when none of them meet the criteria? But I just wanted to emphasize that this is a recommendation, and if you don't think that they fit, like we did last time, there was quite a lot of change, and amounts can be reduced, but to try and stop the round table that happened last time, we just provided a smaller amount to the ones that equally didn't fit the criteria. But it is your decision.
Thanks, Brian. We've got Robin next, please.
I listen with interest to this discussion because various people have touched on various points that have made me feel uncomfortable or thoughtful over the reading of this. And the thing that really sticks for me is that, yes, none of the events met the criteria. And how many events or people who wanted to bring events read the criteria and didn't apply because they thought the criteria didn't apply to them. And so it feels very uncomfortable to me to then reward the people who were, I mean, I guess having a go, being a bit cheeky and going, yep, we don't fit, we're going to apply anyway. And I just don't know how to quantify the lack of those people not applying. So I see Steampunk hasn't applied. They'd equally be bigger than some of these events. And so I would be really happy to just fund the two that have been recommended for the larger amounts. I absolutely understand, and I'm really glad that somebody asked about the Ridge Runner Coromandel and why, I think it was you, Dali, why they were getting more than they asked for. I see that the Whangamata Adventure Race has asked for similar amounts of money, and yet it's getting less than half of what the Ridge Runner comes from. And I just wondered if you could comment about that.
Thanks, Robin.
I think as we've sort of tossed around now, there's no science to this. It was discussed in partnership with Destination Hauraki Coromandel. These were the recommendations we landed on, and if we need to change those recommendations, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Terry.
Thank you. So I'm here to advocate for a group over in Whangamata, which is the Matariki group. They've emailed me quite strongly this morning. Now in February, they missed out on a grant because they didn't feel they met the numbers, but and in the decision made, the event currently is mainly attended by local residents and does not meet the economic requirements of the District Events Fund. They challenged that because, and I went to that one, and there was far more people there than what was suggested in your aid. There was hundreds and thousands or so. It was lots. So what they're saying is our events are attracting a large amount of non-resident ratepayers and out-of-district visitors. This is demonstrated in the growth in 23-24 when plus 600 attendants arrived. Many staying for the long weekend could equal the 1,800 visitor days. With more growth expected this year, we would easily meet the 2,000 visitor criteria days. So this is an event that is run by volunteers. It's not an organisation that makes money. It's making an event very successful. And it kind of starts off how Beach Hop started. You know, we're starting a small event and growing it and making it happen. So they really are a little bit disappointed, I suppose. The money didn't come through. So I just want to make that statement. Thank you.
So, Councillor, if you want to propose an amendment or a different amount for one individual one, then I'd suggest that
We just go.
we can, but I'm just saying, rather than express your concerns, you are entitled to put an amendment and change any of those numbers. And that's the point that Mitch had made earlier. So.
Yeah, well, I would certainly like to have it reconsidered because I feel as a volunteer group that they are producing the numbers that meets the criteria. And this is an event that's going to roll over and grow as the years go by. So I would be very appreciative if that number was looked at in a more suitable.
So let's get through the rest of our speakers, and then we'll look at, if you guys want to propose to change some of those numbers, then you can do it.
So we can look at them individually in the recommendations?
Well, they are recommendations. Personally, to be perfectly blunt, I don't think it's a good use of our time. I think our responsibility should be to decide on the policy and the budget, and then let the staff get on with it. Because we're scrabbling over rats and mice here, and it's not a good use of our time. But here we are, so we'll carry on and do it. So, Peter, and then Delhi, please.
Thanks. So, as somebody said, I think the intent of what we're trying to do here is fantastic. Things to attract visitors, events that will attract visitors. The fact that we have spent more time talking about $31,000 than we have spent talking about the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars around waste management would indicate to me that this is wrong, that we've got this thing fundamentally wrong. And with that, I'm sitting here thinking, why on earth does this budget just not sit with Destination Hauraki Coromandel, and that becomes part of what we require them to do, rather than it get discussed with around a panel. I think of the recommendations, my concern is I probably only see one, maybe two that I would consider would be a strategic investment. The rest to me feel like lolly scramble, and you outlined why you felt that the adventure race should get strong support. I think it was the adventure race or the Ridge Runner, right? Get strong support. When you look at the numbers, the adventure race, they have outlined in their submission that they expect to have costs associated with that of about 35,000. But they're talking about entry fee of $120 and expecting 600 people. So that's an income of 72,000. So 72,000 income for a $35,000 cost. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what part do we really play in doing that? And so overall, the whole thing begins to feel like a lolly scramble. And when the panel then decides, well, we had this money left over, so it just falls into a lolly scramble. I think we can do better, and I think we need to do better. And perhaps it's now that we make that decision, we'll do this better, we'll do it a different way, and to not proceed with this this recommendation.
I don't think it was a Delhi, please, and then Martin and Robin.
I actually like the idea about the DHB, Destination Hauraki Coromandel Board, looking after that and avoiding this sort of angst that we're experiencing. I think the point is that to support Terry, the Matariki Whangamatara is the only one that isn't a commercial venture. Bailey's multi-million-dollar business nationwide. Film festival, adventure race. I just paid $80-something to do the Aramex run at Pauanui. So, and we're bending over backwards in Whitianga to help Greenstone out, which is a multi-million-dollar event. But remembering, of course, that they are bringing people to the district. So I think the debate about being commercial isn't valid, because this is what we've said in different forums, that we're supporting bringing people to the district for the flow-on effect. But I'm cognizant of the fact that we're rating people to do this for commercial companies. So my thought would be to just go ahead with the recommendations. This isn't the place to debate the policy or the philosophy, and bring that back to council at some other time.
No, I agree. Martin and Robin, and then we'll try and wrap this up. Mitch, did you have anything that you wanted to? We'll just move on.
Well, I just, even though $60,000 is still a significant amount of money, when compared to other districts of a similar size, other smaller councils actually have more money. Some have less or none at all, but it is not a lot to work with, and our recommendation that we would bring back to council is that it just returns to an operational discretionary budget that can be used to support events in attracting the right ones to the district. And yeah, we'll bring that back at that next report.
Thanks, Mitch. Martin and then Robin, please, and then we'll wrap it up.
I would support Councillor Daly's comments. We're being asked here about this particular money that was the application, the funding round opened up. We had some people submit. Yes, we didn't have all the golf clubs in the district submit. We had a golf club submit. There's nothing in the criteria which talks about whether it should be a commercial one or shouldn't be a commercial enterprise. But that's a decision that we could potentially look at if we don't, if we're unhappy with this particular policy. So I would just like to, I don't know if I want to get into start putting numbers up on a whiteboard and see how we can reshuffle it. I would be happy with the staff's recommendation, on the understanding that we do, if councillors agree with me, that we do need to have a little look and possibly tweak the settings or the policy.
Thanks, Martin. Robin, please.
Just to be clear, Martin, were you moving that when you said that you were happy with it?
I'd like to hear your comments first, Councillor Sinclair.
Well, hey, look, I'm going to do something really cheeky and move an amendment. Because as I said, I'm listening to what everybody's saying. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that we've got a set of criteria that we are now not sticking to, because I think that anybody who wants to apply to that criteria and who's played by the rules is missing out. And so but I hear what you say about those two big events, the Ridge Runner Coromandel and the Whangamata Adventure Race. So I would like to move the amendment that we fund those two and none of the others.
That's a motion. Through the chair, that's a motion. An amendment would be if
oh yes, but it says
no one agrees with the motion.
My apologies. I'm looking at page 156, and it says it's an amendment to the recommendation that's there. So okay, yeah, but I'll take your advice. I'm happy to move a motion that only funds those two bigger events, the Ridge Runner and the Whangamata Adventure Race.
Okay, so I'm going to let Terry have a comment on this, because he had originally proposed something that was slightly different.
Yeah, so my comment would be, Councillor, would be that I would support Matariki on that, because because they meet the criteria and what we feel. And as a group that's putting on this event annually, it's a growing event, and it brings people into town, and it's well enjoyed.
Could I have a point of order, please, Your Worship? I believe that we have a motion on the table, should be seconded, and then Councillor Walker can do an amendment to that if he so wishes to.
Yeah, happy to do that, councillor. All right.
Yeah, I'll second Robin, so she's got a second now on the
Thank
motion.
you, John.
Thank you.
Could we just get that up on the screen somehow so that we're all clear on what we're voting on?
Yep.
Please.
So when you please 2001. Yeah. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So that's 21,000 out of a 31,000 budget. So we'll have a carry forward of unallocated funds at the end of the financial year. Is that right? Have I got that right?
It just goes into retained earnings if it's unspent.
Okay. All right. So there's the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Right. Can we get a count, please?
With it, Leanne, I believe that somebody at this stage can do an amendment to the motion if he wanted to before we vote.
All right. All right. Terry, you want to go ahead and give us the wording on that? Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to include amendment that Matariki Whangamatara is included into the three key events sponsored through this district fund.
Okay, and the amount?
The amount, I think it was $10,000, wasn't it? Is that right, Kirsten? 10.
So, yep, there'll be 10,625 left over if we went with the proposal from Robin. So that would give us 625 left. All right. So Terry's got an amendment proposed there. He's moved that. Have we got a seconder for that?
I would be comfortable seconding that on a philosophical basis.
All right, we have a seconder, Deli. I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Count, please.
I would like to vote against this motion. And I'll tell you the reasons. The information that Terry has provided subsequent to the discussion and subsequent to the written material that we have has not been provided to all of us. And so I don't feel like I'm playing with a full deck to be able to say yay or nay to the 10,000. So please note my vote against.
I think there's a report in February that came out from them.
Sorry, Aileen?
Mitch might need. I would be keen that Mitch has asked for a comment on this, particularly around the compliance with the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think like the Matariki event does not meet the criteria, but strictly speaking, neither do the other two that we're approving for funding. So it's that I think just again another comment to throw into the mix around this one is that community events are not well funded either. And that community events used to be funded through community board mechanisms and discretionary budgets. And so in the absence of those funds being available, that community events are coming to this fund, which it's not intended for. So you know that it is a valuable community event, but we really want to be attracting people who also don't own properties here. You know, they might come here on a long weekend anyway. This money should be spent on attracting visitors. and those people spend more money when they come to an event. So that's.
Thank you.
Can I just quickly flag that as a conversation, and it sits around the wider conversation of community empowerment, which isn't your problem at the moment, that community boards perhaps need to have more fund available for community events. So I just want to flag that to be part of the discussion around how we do fund events and activities, projects in our areas.
And if I,
there's one other option we could look at, taking this off the agenda and handing it back to the team.
Can I just raise a point?
Through the chair. Can we just go back to the amendment, because all we seen in terms of hands up was those that were for, but we never seen what the outcome was for those against. So can we please go back to do that? And then after we understand what the result of that is, then we can go back to the motion.
Okay. All right. So we've got mover and a seconder. So Robin's moved it.
Hang on, are we?
Sorry, this is the amendment.
Yeah, through the chair.
Terry.
So we go back to the amendment.
Yep.
What we have captured is that those that were for the amendment was Councillor Walker, Councillor Connell, Councillor Morrissey, and Councillor Rodney. And then we were told, no, we did it.
Councillor Gott.
Can we please do it again so we can just make sure that we get this correct?
So Terry's moved it. This is the amendment. Delly's seconded it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Hands up high, please.
And Robin?
I'm voting against the amendment.
Can we check those?
Those against, please. Robin?
Hands up.
My hand is
3, 4, 5. So that is lost.
And Len, what's your vote on that?
I'll vote against it.
Thank you.
And I've got a reason for that. I'll tell you what it is in a second.
No, Robin, you can't see Robin.
You can't see me. I'm here though.
So back to the motion.
So how do we get a motion to take this off the table and give it?
So we go back to the original motion that was put. So when we go back to that one, that will be Ridge Runner and Whangmatai Adventure Race. That's the original motion that was put before the amendment was suggested.
Yeah. Put that to vote.
If I want to move a motion to get it off the table completely.
Then you would move an amendment.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to move an amendment now to take this off the table completely and hand it back to Mitch and Kirsten to, we've already made a decision.
Point of order though, Your Worship, just to keep us straight, I don't believe you can move an amendment that's a direct polar opposite to the motion.
Okay. Okay, we'll do that.
Through the chair, that's correct. You can't do a direct negative.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Who was your seconder, Robin?
I was pro forma just to get it dealt with.
All right. Okay. Oh, it is 2. Thank you. All right. All those in favour?
Aye.
1, 2, 3. Those against, please. Okay, so that is lost. Okay, so now how do I?
So sorry, Len, what was your vote on that one?
Sorry?
What was your vote on?
Against. Thanks, Peter. All right, so the motion that I want to put is that we take this off the table so that councillors stop going around in circles and we hand it back to the staff and delegate responsibility for them to allocate the funds according to the policy that we've already decided on district events funds, and we hand it back to the staff and let them make the decisions. So that's a delegation directly to them.
May I ask a question in relation to that, please, Lynn?
Sure, go ahead.
we have already discussed that you're asking them to make a decision based on the policy, and we have already discussed that all of these sit outside the policy. So does that mean that they could come back with nothing being funded? Because if we're asking them to adhere to the policy that none of these fit, I think it's really unfair to then ask them to allocate outside the policy.
I'll have to read the policy again, but I am not sure there is a condition in there that means that it is exclusive. And so the criteria is there to shoot for. But again, I'll have to check it for the wording. Aileen has got her pen in the air.
Yep. So I'm feeling this is really circular because you've just received staff's recommendations and you're passing it back to staff. So what do you expect us to do apart from make decisions in line with our recommendations that we've just made to you?
So the question I wanted to ask was, and it was in support of staff, is what is the risk here? That we've just gone around in a circle, and what is the risk now of not following the recommendations we've received? And yeah, so I'm backing up exactly what you're saying.
Well, if I just
agree.
when we put these agendas together, we spent half an hour debating this as a leadership team with a number of the third tier managers present, and that's where we landed. So if you want to give it back to us, perhaps you need to give us some guidance about what you expect us to do with it that's different to what we've recommended to you right now.
All right, that makes sense.
Do you want to hear it? Okay. Somehow, in some form of a recommendation, I think that it would be very difficult. I would find it a struggle to justify an event receiving more funds than their application. So I would feel comfortable if the Ridge Runner Coromandel was at the $10,000 of their application. Whangamata Adventure Race, that feels fine. Mercury Bay Film Festival, that feels fine. The Golf Classic, again, I agree that that feels uncomfortable in terms of it's hugely commercial. Matariki Whangamata, that's at $10,000. I could support that at about 3.5K. Fitty Run Fest, could support that. And the Wings and Wheels clearly made some money. So I'm not quite sure why they're looking to us for such significant amounts. So I wouldn't support that. So that's my take on things. All right, seconded by Gary.
Through the chair, we have a motion that was put by Mia Lynn. However, if you'd like to, you can withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like. Oh, sorry.
As an observation, can I just say that I think there is a really clear steer to the staff, and that is, if you have a criteria, we believe that you should meet the criteria. So if you feel that there is a need to change the criteria, then change the criteria and apply that against the applicants that you have. And, I would go one stage further. If you change the criteria, then you should re-advertise it to enable those that missed the first time from applying because they thought they were outside of the criteria to reapply for it. That would be where my thinking. I feel really uncomfortable about handing out money when it's outside of criteria.
I would like to propose that we do not proceed with the major event grants at this point in time, and that we request staff to review the whole process that we have around this, where it should lie. We've had a couple of suggestions about DHC, and to come back and for a decision about how we in the future, or from this point on, are going to approach the district events funds.
Thanks, Peter.
Right.
Let's test this. We've got a motion.
Yeah, that's a motion.
This. All right.
We've
got this. So we're going to test this first. So moved by Rekka, seconded by Gary. All right. We're going to put this to the vote. All those in favour? Yep. Yep.
Wait, can we just, hands in the air, Robin?
All those in favour?
I am voting against this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
And you have a second round, is it October?
So you just asked against?
Yeah.
Oh,
Against.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
And Robin.
So we've got
And-
time between the next round to get the policy right.
So through the chair, this, as we touched on earlier, this process is currently under review and is coming back to you in the next meeting. So, which will be June, which will be before you do the next round.
Peter, will that,
Because-
and I think you make a good point, Peter, is that going to land us where we need to be in terms of looking at the policy as we move forward so that we avoid this again?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
I could not see the hands. You guys are a tiny, tiny little box. And so it would appreciate a verbal confirmation that would, because I'm assuming that vote was won.
We're just working on that now.
Okay, thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for the motion was 6, against was 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, Robin?
And just before you go, Mitch and Kirsten, thank you very much. That was an agonising 15 minutes for us, and it would have been a lot worse for you. So thank you very much.
We really want to try and
Hey,
make this easier and simpler. It's not a good use of our time or staff. Thanks, sorry. Item 2.5, CoLab proposed constitution change.
I would like to move that we accept that and rubber stamp it and get on with our lives.
I'll second that.
Hope you've all read it.
Okay. Do you want to speak to it or just take it as read?
It's just been moved and
I'd like to speak.
All right. Okay. John Grant, please.
So the principle that sits in behind this, just to save a whole lot of debate, but is the need to have a refreshment and a turnover of people on this group. And what we're voting for here is the opposite to that. And so I'm uncomfortable and will vote against it.
Thanks, John. And I have a feeling there are reasons why this has come forward. Aileen, can you throw any light on that for us?
Not particularly. It's fairly much as it is on the papers. The CEs have collectively agreed as in their roles supporting CoLab that they'd like to keep the current chair on for longer, and that's currently precluded by the Constitution. All the CEs agree. I wasn't at the meeting when it happened, so I've had not expressed a view on it, and yeah, I've struggled to form an opinion, to be honest.
Thank you. Terry, you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. I agree with John Grant over this, Councillor Grant. Yeah, you need to have refreshers. You need people to come on with new ideas and that, and this is a bit of a surprise. My point of clarification is if we said, no, we don't want it, but the other council saying, yes, they do, how much power is that? What does that make? Does it require everybody to agree to make it happen?
Called democracy.
But I guess the question is anyone else in the running for the job?
Well, I think if this is